Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of Heavy Hands. I am your host, Connor Rebush. With me, as always, is Phil McKenzie. Everything going very properly for today's intro, as you can see. No sort of self-referential jokes.
No, what's going on? Where are we?
Oh, sorry, Phil. We started recording.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
You said you were going off to get a drink. I also went to get a drink.
Of presumably, by that sound, bean juice.
Yes! That's exactly what
delicious
because we are watching Heavy Hands.
Can of bean juice. The Brits have cut out the middleman. Why bother putting these little globules of protein on our toast when we can just dump tomato sauce directly on the bread?
I'm drinking it out of the can.
Well, Phil, we had UFC 274. It was good.
I mean, it wasn't, but it was interesting.
It was, though. I mean, some parts were great.
Yeah.
Some parts were incredible. Some parts were incredibly horrible. Some parts were horribly horrible. It really did run the gamut.
It was a Frankenstein card.
I mean, shit started to fall apart, I think, the day after we recorded last week's episode. Possibly 2 days, when Oliveira missed weight. I mean, that was the first thing that, of course, had me really feeling as if I was personally a curse. Because I had already mentioned, this thing that has happened numerous times where I doubt someone, I finally give them a vote of confidence, and then, of course, that's when they lose. And here he is, like, dying on the scale, weighing in at the same exact weight, I believe, both attempts. Clearly had nothing left to lose after this particular camp, and it's like, okay, it's not going to work. It worked fine. He's Charles Oliveira. The co-main event, we were very excited. The possibilities. How can a rematch come back? How can the ghost of a first fight return to haunt a seemingly much improved fighter? And we said, how funny it would be if Carla Esparza won. And Phil, we had no fucking idea. We really didn't. That was amazing in its own very unique way. Michael Chandler, Tony Ferguson seemed almost like it wasn't going to be the fight we thought it was going to be, and then it was far more horrible than anything we'd ever expected.
True tragedy is about subversion of expectations.
That's right. I mean, a very interesting card, to say the least, and frequently, again, quite exciting to watch. I'm not going to go and pretend that this wasn't...
There's lots of things to say about it, I think. It's definitely, and I think we've seen that with activity on Twitter and so on afterwards. It's a fun one to talk about. It was not always a fun one to watch.
No. Well, we're going to get to the part that was least fun to watch in segment 2. I think we're basically just going to run in reverse chronological order here, as per usual. The main event first, an erstwhile title fight between Charles Oliveira and Justin Gaethje. Presumably they're just going to have Charles Oliveira fight for the vacant belt in his next fight, because how can you pretend that this man isn't sort of still the champion? And then we're going to move on to Namajunas Esparza 2, Chandler versus Ferguson, and if we have time for anything else, we'll squeeze it in, or maybe do a short little bonus episode if it just won't fit. So, Chucky Olives, Justin Gaethje. We were, against all odds, Phil, right.
Somewhat, yes.
Somewhat. What are your reservations?
You were right. I picked Gaethje.
Oh, you idiot. What were you thinking?
Because I was just like, he's just going to get punched in the head super hard.
Yeah, and he did.
Uh-huh.
Although, shockingly, it was Gaethje who was first to get hurt.
Yeah. I mean, they just traded shots. And, I mean, in some ways, that one punch right at the beginning of the fight ended up being a weird microcosm. Just because they both threw super hard shots, but Gaethje was super off balance, and despite being, as we said before the fight, just pretty much the more durable guy, he was off balance and out of position, and Oliveira wasn't.
Yeah.
And Oliveira didn't defend the shot, but it didn't matter because he was just in position better.
Yeah, and this didn't feel even at the time like a particularly insightful thought, but still a good time to have mentioned that Oliveira would, as E. Casey Layden said, just sort of a lightweight Verdum strategy with the, oh, you're not going to follow me to the ground. Well, I'll just fall down. I think he was hurt, but it was really, really relevant for this fight that how much this style functions for him based on those moments of recovery, because nobody wants to grapple with him even from top position. I mean, there was one point he literally pulled guard in a title fight in 2022.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think, back when Verdum was, in his prime and winning the title and so on, that was the comparison I think me and David Castillo made. I think Oliveira is obviously more insistent on pressure than Verdum ever was, but yeah, the idea of just punching right into the clinch and then going kind of ham there and just being completely unafraid of anything that's coming back. That's been a big part of both their games for quite some time, and yeah, it was something which, I mean, so what do you think of the narrative of this fight? Because this was Oliveira's, in some ways, it was his most dominant win that he's had in this title run, while still he got dropped twice.
Yeah, while still including the requisite early knockdowns, of which there is always at least one, and there were two here. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's just like Oliveira afterwards was like shouting about how God is on his side. He's like, he does have the sort of courage now of a holy warrior. He just doesn't give a shit. And again, he's got that safety zone, and he fights as if it is a safety zone.
And everyone else also treats it as a safety zone.
Yeah,
so,
which
it is.
It is, exactly. Which is why I'm now begging to see what happens against somebody who wants to grapple with him. Because it seems like a pretty important part of the whole puzzle. What if you can go down and after him and just not get subbed? What if you can beat him up like we've seen happen in the relatively recent past? Paul Felder beat this man.
It's been a long time. It's been a long time since Charles Oliveira has been beaten by a pure striker. But it's been much less long since he's been either out grappled or subbed.
Yeah, beaten by a grappler or who thinks he's a striker. Yeah. So
but yeah, okay, what else were we we write about? So we were talking about the leg kick dynamic because we were mentioning the attrition dynamic.
Yeah.
And we said that Oliveira is going to be tenderizing Gaethje to the body.
He did. Very well, especially with the knees.
Kicks. And we tried to figure out what the leg kick dynamic was going to be like. And we said, yeah, he looks good. Because the only ones we can really find were Jeremy Stevens. He actually said he defends those pretty well and is very aggressive after them. And that really did end up being key, I think. Yeah, because I think I saw you touching on this on Twitter, right? Is that without being able to low kick people, Justin Gaethje doesn't really have a super reliable range weapon.
He doesn't have a way of moderating the pace of a fight. If somebody just doesn't care about getting hit and insists on coming forward and punishing every attempt he makes to hit them, which is exactly how Oliveira fought. Gaethje wants to flit around and he wants you to respect his power, and he can time those shots well. He's accurate for the most part. He puts together good combinations for the most part. Daniel Cormier is always raving about Justin Gaethje's left hook, and this is often the, that lone moment of the card when Daniel Cormier is just very correct about something. Because he's right. It's a fantastic punch. Gaethje throws it super well. It is frequently the shot that really hurts his opponents after he sends in the right hand. And he throws it really well. But, he can't throttle his opponent's pace. If the opponent just says fuck it and wants to have a brawl with Gaethje, then his new, oh, I'm not just a brawler anymore style doesn't exist. He is a brawler. He has to do it. And that ended up being a big case. The leg kicks were interesting because I recall our main conclusion sort of being, we couldn't find a lot of instances of Oliveira checking low kicks, but it was largely because he just didn't let people get many off.
Yeah.
We were interested to see how it would fare because Gaethje will throw them as counters. He'll throw them from much closer ranges than most people are willing to. I would say the willingness to just pile on after a kick was very, very important here. He also actually did a pretty good job checking them.
Mm-hmm. I mean, yeah, even in that Stevens fight, he is kind of tie walking in as. I think it's probably the thing he actually. I mean, okay, yeah, I think maybe we did actually say he probably doesn't defend them any more than he defends anything else. I think maybe they're the thing that he actually defends the best.
Well, it seems like probably if we're looking at Stevens and Gaethje as opponents, that Oliveira probably looks at a guy who likes to throw devastating low kicks and thinks, I'm going to really hone my checking for this camp.
Mm-hmm.
If those are the two best performances, and I think, absence of thinking anything else, they probably are. It does also just seem like he kind of shores that up a little bit and comes in ready to check when he's facing one of these guys. He did a good job checking them. He added that to his willingness to step in hard and counter them. I thought, the really big thing with this fight, Charles Oliveira on the feet, the thing that really stood out to me was just what a flexible offensive striker Oliveira is. We sort of talked about this with Gaethje just being a more, not even always in a bad way, but a more rudimentary striker, just having a few items in his kit. And Oliveira really flourishes because he has like at least 3 weapons for every range he could possibly find himself at. And his bloodthirsty desire to keep the pressure on his opponents means that in a lot of recent fights, he has shown a serious knack for exchanging with someone in the pocket and then nailing them when they try to reset. He's not a turn-taking striker in the way that so many are, because he can extend or contract the range at which he's throwing really, really well, which sounds like a simple thing, but genuinely is a thing you have to spend a long time training to be able to pick up on these changes in distance, even in the midst of a single combination, and adjust your next shot to account for that.
Yeah, I think in some ways this sort of goes back to his defense as well, because I think the two are tied together. Is that Oliveira is simply so offensively focused that he is always in position, and for whatever reason, he does not freak out in standing exchanges at all anymore.
No,
not really. He's there to be, he's still there to be hit, but it's one of these things that we've talked about. You can see how fighters look when they're up on their heavy bag, right? And they'll often look just great. They'll be throwing in combination. They'll be mixing up their levels.
Yeah.
And it's because, when they're able to stand there and keep their base under them and think about what they're doing, they're able to, they're able to do all these things. They're able to be clever and to mix up their shots and Oliveira is kind of like that. He is always in front of his opponent. He is always in his stance. He is there to be hit, but he is thinking very, very carefully about how to hit his opponent.
Yeah.
And more than that, he is keeping track of mechanically how to hit his opponent.
Yes.
That was such a big difference in this fight, was that when they were in these wild exchanges, Oliveira just kept going with these snappy punches. I said this on Twitter. It's a bit like the Neil Magny dynamic for the clinch. Is that people are just like, I can hit this guy.
Mm-hmm.
And then they just try and start to hit him, just start to throw more and more into hitting him. They're just like, well, I connected super clean on him, so surely all I have to do is simply hit him as hard as humanly possible.
Mm-hmm.
But, Oliveira might not be the best defensive fighter in the world, but he's able to get out of the way of, like, the punches that Justin Gaethje started throwing.
Yeah.
But more than that, he is tight, he is compact. If you watch the final knockdown, he is not... When he's chasing Gaethje out of the pocket, he's not chasing him, he's not sprinting after him, he simply steps forward and knocks him down.
He's timing him, exactly.
Yeah. That left hook that he killed Chandler with, is, it's picture perfect.
Yeah, so there's I guess there's 3 or 4. I should have counted this in my head before. Let's find out if there's 3 or 4 discrete ranges. There's the clinch, which more and more seems to just be a huge part of the success that Oliveira has against people on the feet. In which he's got uppercuts, elbows, knees. There's close range, uppercuts, hooks, elbows, knees, just longer ones. There's middle distance, right hands, jabs, longer left hooks. And then there's long range where he will kick the shit out of you. Front kicks, low kicks, and sometimes just fly in with a punch too. These are the really cool parts of this fight when like Gaethje would, like you said, he would get into an exchange with just this reckless confidence, like, oh, I'm hitting this guy at will. And then the moment he steps back, range changes. Oliveira is still in position. Gaethje is like, I don't know. To see Justin Gaethje like getting put in a place, it's not the first time this has happened, but to see him like throwing himself down on missed punches like he's Ronda Rousey.
Mm-hmm.
And it really is the case that more and more as this very short fight went on, Oliveira was actually making him miss. I think you're right that you get this extreme overconfidence, or else you, if not confidence, then a sort of desperation, because
I think it's
very uncomfortable.
A combination of the two, right?
It's very uncomfortable, but you know you can hit him, so you have to hit him.
Yep.
And that causes you to make mistakes. And yeah, for whatever reason, experience, I don't know, but Oliveira just, it is like, you're absolutely right. It is like he's fighting a heavy bag. The problem is, bag no hit back. But what if I pretend that opponent no hit back either? Which again, makes it clearer and clearer that the crux of this whole game is that no one goes to the ground with him.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you could knock Charles Oliveira down and even just take him down and be safe, it's your round. You're banking rounds on him like that, and you're probably going to hit him clean again the next round.
I think of all the fighters that Oliveira has fought, though, Justin Gaethje was the one for whom that was an impossibility.
Yeah, he was.
I think Poirier probably could have actually fought Oliveira from top position.
I think so too.
I mean, we saw that Chandler could. But yes, Gaethje, we mentioned that he's someone who I think who viscerally doesn't like grappling.
Yeah.
That's why he fights takedowns so hard.
Yeah.
But yeah, he I think of all the fighters, I think I've seen even more than Robbie Lawler, who would, happily beat people up from top position if given the opportunity. I don't think Justin Gaethje just likes grappling.
Yeah. And why would he? It's kind of lame.
Absolutely. I'm not here for the finer points of grappling.
The finer points.
Yeah, I mean, I think what we've learned is that the big mistake for Justin Gaethje was not, it was not switching camps or changing style or anything like that. It was getting his eyes fixed. Because now he can see what's happening, and he's worrying about what's happening around him. And meanwhile, Charles Oliveira is in there, blind as a bat, just like, when he's in front of me, I'm just going to pour all the offense on the world into him. And when he's not, I'm pretty sure everything's going to be fine. Ow, what was this thing that just hit me in my face? Oh, never mind. And
they say the shot you don't see is the one that hurts you.
Yeah, well, he's clearly learned how to get around that. So yeah, I'm gonna move away from like anyone who's like, oh, Whitman has trained him to be an outfighter without any tools for controlling range or anything like that. No, the advantage is eyes. Mm-hmm. Sorry, the disadvantage is eyes. If he couldn't see, it would have been way better. Yeah,
I mean, it does. The thing is, I'm going to sound. This is really the benefit of hindsight because I wasn't sure if it would work or not beforehand. Granted, I like to think that if I was tasked with scouting this fight or preparing a fighter in camp, I might have thought more about this. It does seem, in hindsight, like a very questionable approach. You're going to let Charles Oliveira pressure you. You know you're going to get to hurt him.
I mean, I don't think... I think Capoza said this. I don't think there was any letting there. I mean...
Well, you're fighting Charles Oliveira.
On him immediately.
Yeah, but then what's your answer to that if you're preparing to fight him? You know that's a given. That's the way he fights.
Oliveira was on him and also hurt him within like 5 seconds, so he may have just been in survival mode. Yeah, difficult to say.
Yeah. But it does feel like it doesn't even need to be a huge change. It just needs to be a little more depth to Justin Gaethje's game, and I don't think even this fight is impossible for a guy like him to win. But he needs a way to... He needs some obstacles that don't require him overthrowing, that don't put him at just as much risk as they do the opponent they're hitting, that enable him to actually maintain that distance where he can walk Oliveira into gigantic punches, but also to control the pace of somebody who doesn't care about getting hit with gigantic punches. He needs a jab.
Also, like, if he was going to swing massive, huge shots, it would have made sense to go to the body, but he just doesn't do that.
He threw one body jab, which got countered by a right hand.
Yeah.
Yeah, he should have been...
But like just a big arcing left hook to the body.
Absolutely.
Probably would have worked pretty well.
Or again, have a jab, stick the jab in his face, sling a gigantic right hook to the body. Something. Max Holloway did it. Max Holloway shredded Oliveira with almost exclusively body shots.
Yeah, I mean, I would like to see Oliveira fight a grappler. I would like to see him fight, well, Islam, honestly. Not just because I want to see him tested, but also because he's just been fighting like massive punches in a row. And I picked Gaethje for that reason. You know, I said I didn't think it was the smart pick, but just that, you know, one of these guys is going to get him at some point.
Yeah, give him a break now.
And yeah, I don't want to see like, I don't want to have him go through Chandler and Poirier and Gaethje, and all of them have hurt him super badly. And then eventually it's just like, no, you just need to fight these guys until one of them, when they bum rush you in the first round, they knock you out.
Right.
Like, he's done it. I don't need to see him fighting them again unless there's a reason, like there's a good reason for it.
Yeah. It would be like the worst one too, because they already ran out of the good ones. So it'd be like Beneil Dariush would knock him out.
Mm-hmm.
Although actually Dariush would be
I'd be fine with Dariush.
That'd be an interesting fight because he would grapple too.
Yeah, that'd be a good chance he would follow him to the ground.
Absolutely. So I would like to see that. But I'm 100% here for Makhachev next. That sounds very interesting. Totally different style. Someone who absolutely, I assume, will grapple with Oliveira. How funny would it be if a Makhachev for the first time ever is like, I don't know. They say this guy's really, they say this guy's really scary on the ground. But yeah, that sounds like the right move to make. There's just a couple other, or maybe even just one other detail I'll point out. Charles Oliveira's clinch, I said before, really, really important. The fact that he can push into that he can grab it when people get too close to him. It gives him a lot of confidence in just, also with, having no fear of being taken down. These two things combine to give him a lot of confidence in just chasing after people. I really, really liked the way he transitions in and out of the clinch. I thought that was a super important part of this fight, and he made it look really cool. There were times when he would step in, it would look like a jab, and he would just sort of grab like a long side clinch kind of grip and yank Gaethje's head down into a knee. There were times when he would throw an uppercut. In fact, he landed a lot of good uppercuts, which we did mention that Gaethje would have one of his own best weapons used against him here. And on contact with the uppercut, would just slide that into a collar tie and throw a knee to the body or a knee to the head. And there were, I think, even twice, even in this very short round, he threatened a standing guillotine, which is another great option for a guy like Oliveira out of the clinch. And, you know, not even really looking as if he was, I'm sure if it was in, he would have taken it, but not really fighting that hard to get it. Just putting enough pressure on the back of Gaethje's head that he has to panic for a minute and yank his head free. And then the hand that's under the chin follows Gaethje's head up and out, even helps lift it and lines him up for a range adjusting punch as Gaethje is trying to scramble out of the pocket. So he would guillotine, Gaethje would pop out, he'd keep that hand on his chin to keep him where he was and line him up for like a long right hand. I think that happened twice. Very cool transition. Something that is, someone else mentioned this on Twitter, and as I said, it's one of the few things I remember very clearly from Fedor Emelianenko's book. That he actually demonstrates that little transition grappling striking sequence.
Yeah, I mean, Oliveira might be like the most, I don't know, offensively potent MMA fighter we've ever seen in some ways.
Honestly.
It just, in terms of the sheer array of finishing threats this guy presents, there might not be anyone better.
I mean,
ever.
33 wins and 30
19
finishes.
Wow.
He has only won 3 decisions, and 7 of his 8 losses are finishes too. He is the action champion. And he's incredible. And I love him, you know, and I'm really glad that I didn't curse him by finally picking him this time. We'll see which way I lean when that Makhachev fight gets made, but, incredible.
Yeah, this has been perhaps the most, you know, I think he's now kind of, we've mentioned this was like the Robbie Lawler title reign.
It's better. It's better.
It's even better. Like, it's even more insane.
Like it's in some ways it isn't, because we haven't gotten quite the same sort of, like, very few things are ever going to come close to Lawler McDonald 2.
Or indeed, but yeah, Lawler Condit.
For just a legendary battle of titans kind of feeling. Oliveira's is like an accelerated, even more action-packed kind of reign.
Yeah. Just as far as insane, explosive, non-stop violence goes. Because, you know, Lawler Condit and Lawler McDonald were also that way. These sort of slow builds and so on.
Yeah.
By necessity. The Oliveira era is one of the most nuts I've ever seen.
It's insane. It's insane. And it's not even like he can't help it. Like he maybe Justin Gaethje should have been that opponent. He finished Justin Gaethje in a way no one else has. He didn't even wear him down. He just rocked him out of the gate.
He didn't. He didn't even take him down.
He didn't even take him down.
Just punched him.
He's like, I know a quicker way. Just dropped his ass. Unbelievable. I have never seen a title reign like it. It's truly incredible.
Yep.
Yeah.
Long may it continue.
Yes.
Okay. I mean, it would be hilarious if, you know, every time we're like, oh, I don't know if this is the one where it's going to fail on him. And then, 3 years later, 10 fights in, he's having exactly the same fights.
Yeah.
I wish that would happen. It would be amazing.
Maybe I just come up with actually a very interesting theory. Maybe it's, maybe this was a strategic surgical choice here that won Oliveira this fight, because he knew Justin Gaethje had his eyes improved. Oliveira, I'm sure, has had the option to do that. I mean, I don't know if he doesn't want to take time off training or whatever, because you got to let that stuff heal. He opted instead, obviously, for an invasive and I'm sure intensely painful teeth whitening procedure.
Yeah.
Which probably put a blinding glare into the eyes Justin Gaethje had only just gotten used to using.
That's a damn good point.
If it was still a blind Justin Gaethje, he wouldn't have been so blind.
Yep. It just goes to show you
that makes sense.
Eyes are a liability.
That's right. Oh.
Albedo is the true weapon of the modern mixed martial artist.
Charles Oliveira, our Zatoichi. All right, let's take a break. When we come back, well, you know what's next.
Hey everybody, thanks for listening to this week's Heavy Hands. If you like what you hear, please consider pledging to support the podcast on Patreon. Patreon is basically continuous crowdfunding. You sign up to contribute a certain amount per month to help us with production costs and the like, and in return you get rewards ranging from a mention on the Heavy Hands website to a question or topic of your choice being discussed on the show. We have a lot more in the works to reward you for your help, and we appreciate every contribution. No amount is too small. Just head over to patreon.com and find how you can help out, the only show dedicated to the finer points of face punching. Now let's get back to it.
Okay. Welcome back to Heavy Hands. If you're wondering about the heavy sigh in my voice, don't believe it. I actually had a great time. Carlos Barza, Rose Namajunas. Those names should be reversed, but I sort of feel like after a performance like that, you don't get to have your name first ever again. Where to even begin, Phil?
I mean, in an analysis of all-time great bad fights, I guess. Because,
yeah,
you know, we've actually watched together on the Depressed Us, we've watched Shamrock 7-2, which is, you know, infamously the most boring fight in MMA history.
Yeah.
And after that, you're like, whenever any fight comes up and people say, oh, this is the worst fight ever, you have to be like, no, Shamrock 7-2, it's super long, they don't do anything. And so every time you talk about a fight being like super bad and one of the all-time worst fights ever, it's always, you have to think of it in terms of context. Because it would be impossible for any modern fight to compete with Shamrock 7-2.
Right.
Because like, this was from an era where people couldn't strike at all. It was from two people who tried to strike. And it was when they were like, apparently they were just not allowed to strike. They were told beforehand that they weren't allowed to throw closed fist strikes. And so, you know, it famously got us with just the, minutes upon minutes of circling. But, so every time you talk about something as being like the worst ever, it has to be within the context of, you know, it's the worst fight in modern mixed martial arts. That's what you have to say, right?
Mm-hmm.
This might actually just be the worst fight in modern mixed martial arts. It doesn't need the contextual disclaimer.
Worst fight.
It is actually in serious, major contention for just being the worst fight I've ever fucking
We're
seen.
experts here. We do the Depressed Us.
We've seen a lot of
We've
shit.
rewatched Woodley Thompson 2. We rewatched Shevchenko versus everyone.
Nunez 2 and Shevchenko Carmouche.
We rewatched Ngannou Lewis.
We rewatched Ngannou Lewis. This I think this is the worst fight I've ever seen. I think this is worse than Shamrock 7-2.
It absolutely is. Nothing happened. Nothing happened.
So
nothing.
I've never fast forwarded a title fight before.
I actually didn't. I couldn't. I couldn't. I was actually having the feeling watching this because I went and did some. I played spades and rummy with my mom and sister. You know, had a nice little Mother's Day evening on Saturday, and so I missed this live. I watched it late Saturday night, or rather very early Sunday morning when I got back. And I had the strange experience of being sad that I missed this live. It was so bad. It was almost like feeling you'd missed something amazing.
Yeah, I mean, this was a transformative experience. This must have been a transformative experience. Like, I remember, like, there was a comic book
Akira.
I read. Yeah, there was a comic book I read once about, and there's about some people fighting aliens or whatever, and the aliens have been torturing the humans, and they've made a pit of pure distilled pain. They just tried to bring it to its highest height, and one of the main characters falls into it, and everyone's like, "Well, he's dead." But then they manage to fish him out. He's still alive, and they're like, "What was it like?" It's like, "It was amazing." It was actually transcendent. I mean, this was a transcendently awful fight.
Yeah,
this was the religious experience of. I mean, we've seen like a few candidates for year-end awards in this. Like on this card, right?
Yeah.
This seems like an absolute lock for worst fight.
Oh.
But also, obviously, an absolute lock for worst brain thinking.
Oh, my God. It's everything. You're right.
Yeah.
It was a spirit quest, the experience of watching this fight.
I never would have thought this was possible. If you told me something could outdo Shamrock 7-2 in the modern era, I would just be like, no.
Because people know how to do things now.
Yeah. They know they're allowed to punch people.
Okay, so let me frame this the best way I can think about it, because you're right, it's worst brain thinking. I think I get it, is the thing. I think I fully understand everything that happened here.
Yeah, I mean, sure, there's a rationale you can understand.
Yeah. I'm going to frame this, as I already have online, as this being, I mean, I think Rose should retire and probably recede from public life. So if this is the end of her UFC career, there's no more fitting way for that to end. Whatever happens after this is the end of an arc, right? There's a very natural, as we said beforehand, a very natural narrative here. Esparza was your first title fight. Now you fight her almost 8 years later. What's changed? And the arc it has is a Twilight Zone episode.
Yep.
Because clearly, Rose's rationale in the training camp for this fight was, well, I lost that first fight because I was so reckless and aggressive. I burned myself out, I let her take me down, and then I spent too much energy getting out of those takedowns. I had plenty of success early, but then I was just flailing and I lost, and it was because I was too reckless. Ergo, if I avoid being reckless, I will win. That's pretty clearly the thought process.
And also the idea that, like, if the fight is on the feet, I am winning. If it's on the ground, she is winning.
Yeah. And you can see
that's not how it works.
When the decision was read afterwards, all the quotes that came out afterwards, she was baffled. It was truly a Twilight Zone protagonist moment of like, that's not fair. That's not fair at all. I wasn't reckless. I didn't dive into anything. I didn't let anything happen. Exactly. Nothing happened. So you lost.
Don't I get points for defense?
She said that. Oh, I don't get no points for defense. No! you explicitly...
No, you don't. That's not how it works.
You explicitly do not get points for defense.
There are very few sports where you do.
So yeah, I think that was it. That was the whole thought process, is she was thinking, I'm going to avoid the critical error I made last time. And it revealed, in a way that these far-flung rematches often do, it revealed that the problem is deeper and not quite so easy to solve as even you, the fighter, thought it was. As even your very good coach and your very strange boyfriend thought it was. The problem, maybe it isn't that you were too reckless. Maybe, like most problems, it's because you have a certain kind of deep insecurity that prevents you from making any adjustment when things aren't going your way. I have a good game plan, and you can stick to it, and you can stick to it. It's like discipline was Rose's saving grace, right? Partway through her career, she developed discipline. Her technique got better. She learned to stick to a game plan. So in fights when things weren't necessarily working out as she'd hoped, in Jacek 2 and Draj 2, she could cling to her discipline. And those opponents might kind of help destroy themselves the way she destroyed herself against Esparza. Discipline was the savior. And now we see that inability to adjust, that discipline can also be a horrible, horrible, horrible flaw. Because she was incapable of recognizing that she needed to do something different. Esparza was unable to track her down. And Rose thought she was winning because of that. But nothing happened.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard to say that Esparza, won this fight. She didn't do anything, but also, we've said this many times before, there's a bar below which fights can slip, beyond which no one deserves to win. And this is 100% there.
Yeah, except this is the first fight in history where aggression and octagon control are actually decisive factors in almost every round.
I mean, because you have nothing else to score it
Exactly.
on.
That's why they say it should be really exceedingly rare for those to even be considered, because there's always some difference.
There's always something.
In offense. That there effectively was not.
I mean, so I remember I saw a stat afterwards where they were like, Justin Gaethje and Charles Oliveira landed as many significant strikes as they did in the whole fight or whatever it was, and it was like 60 significant strikes. So I was like, there's no way. There is no way that 60 significant strikes were landed in that fight. It is absolutely impossible.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. It was that uneventful that I can tell you for a fact that there is no way that 10 significant strikes landed between two of them per round.
That I suppose gets into the definition of significant strike, which it bears reminding once again. The stat keepers consider any strike at range a significant strike, whether or not it lands particularly cleanly, whether or not it's a jab or a huge left hook. If it lands at long striking distance, it is a significant strike on the stats.
You know what really brought this into worst brain thinking category is, I mean, well, let's not say the worst brain thinking category, but like into worst brain thinking, like all-time great status, is that Esparza did get in on takedowns and couldn't do anything with any of them.
Yeah.
And that Rose took nothing away from this.
Nothing.
She wasn't like, man, at least, in the last minute of every round, I should just fuck her up.
Yeah.
Because even as it turns out, if she gets in on me, I can just scramble out. It's fine.
No, instead she did nothing.
Instead, she just continued doing absolutely nothing.
She waited until 10 seconds left in the fight and then revealed that, in fact, she could take Esparza down.
Yes.
She could take her down
keep her
there.
It was one of the most suicidally awful performances imaginable. It was just like, yeah, I could out wrestle her if I wanted to, and she can't actually out wrestle me. And I'm a far better striker under every metric. I'm going to do nothing and just lose on moving backwards.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, I mean, my God, the whole Willie Pep thing about winning a round without landing a punch is supposed to be apocryphal, but Esparza did that at least twice. Because Rose just didn't land one back. Yeah, I think probably the thought process went something like, again, I think this did reveal a fundamental, this is in many ways, Phil, the ultimate proof of our eternal style matchup theory of rematches.
I still think Jacek Shevchenko is probably better because it looked exactly like the ones they had when they were just.
But that's why this is like this is why it's a wonderful example, because typically they come back and you're like, oh my God, they looked the same. And this shows, I think this really demonstrates that there is always something deeper under the surface of like what techniques the fighters like, what games, what their physical game looks like. There's something beyond that affects a style matchup. And it is how the fighters feel when they're fighting.
I feel like this is simply, I don't know, I feel like this is simply Amber Yunus being a head case.
Exactly.
Like, because she
and her
totally
particular
could have won it.
Exactly. And her particular head caseness was, I think, a big part of what caused her to lose the first time. She couldn't fucking calm down. She couldn't stop doing what she was doing. She is a hole digger, Phil. She digs a hole. And whether what she's doing is working or not, she's going to keep digging. That, I think, is the defining trait of Rose Namajunas, that in the most insane mirror universe way possible, somehow lost her this fight, looked nothing like the first fight. And yet, there is a strange echo of the first fight, because everything that happened here was an insane overreaction to that bout 8 years ago.
Yep.
That somehow, despite everything being completely different, played on, I think, the same core problems that caused her to lose that. You can literally you can change so much and come in with such a different strategy and still just be incapable of winning the fight for essentially the same reason. That is kind of mind blowing.
Yeah.
That's the thing that strikes me. That's why it's a fucking Twilight Zone episode.
Yeah, because it's the
horrible irony,
the hideous irony of it all,
the crushing irony of that. Let's talk about the cornering.
I wasn't paying a lot of attention, I gotta be honest.
Goodness me.
As I said, I was using, I'm sorry, liberal use of fast forward.
How dare you? And miss a classic like this?
And Zayn has apparently claimed that he's going to make us watch it 3 times in a row, so...
It's going to be every single one of the Deprestos fights. Just
that's his plan.
I kind of like that. I feel like it will be like...
You like that in theory.
I don't know, Phil. I think it will be like going into the pit of pain. I think I'll come out a changed man.
After 75 minutes of Namajunas Esparza.
Okay, so then I will fill you in on what happened in the corner, because it was a very strange dynamic. First of all, Trevor Whitman clearly thinks there's a certain way he has to talk to Esparza. Or rather to Namajunas. He's one of those coaches who's, will change his temperament in the corner, depending on who he's dealing with. He can be very blunt and direct and severe. He can get angry. With Rose, he does like this weird like Disney Channel dad thing where he just never stops smiling, and he talks in like this really encouraging, everything's okay. It's like he's talking to a horse.
Yep.
I mean, I don't know if doing something different would have made a difference here. But what that resulted in was him sort of only feeling that he could hint that things weren't going well. Because I don't think Trevor Whitman thought they were going well. He's watched far too many fights. I believe he was very aware that this fight was, a draw at best. And also that's very unlikely because this just don't happen. There are no draw rounds in this sport. They just don't get scored. But he was clearly, as the fight went on, like, all right, let's make something happen. All right, you're doing great. I just need a little more out of you. You could maybe do a little more. Very just sort of tiptoeing around the edge of you're not doing anything. And I think a big reason why this was ineffective is that Pat Barry was there in the corner just being a cheerleader.
Yep.
He was telling Rose that she was doing beautifully. He was telling her quite pointedly that the crowd was booing, and that meant they were doing well. Because I guess this was the plan, was to just make it sort of a slow fight, which is why Rose is, again, so miffed that everyone's upset because in some ways she fought the fight she prepared for and there were no problems. Nothing prevented her from fighting the fight she prepared for. She just, and this is the other thing. This was an interesting window into what a fight feels like for both fighters. Because Rose clearly didn't know she was losing. She couldn't, feel that she was losing. I'm sure this fight felt like a blink to these guys.
Yep.
25 eternal minutes for the audience was just like nothing. But more noticeably, Carla Esparza, Colin Oyama in her corner was like, yeah, it's round 5 next. You gotta do something. And she did the blinking affronted guy meme at him. She was like, it's what round? She thought it was the second round. Time was just a blur for both of them. And it's this interesting thing where, yeah, you just can't get anything done and everything just stretches out and you just don't realize how little you're getting done. But Rose had every advantage, which is why I blame her far more than Esparza. Esparza's 5'1". If your goal in the fight is to keep her at bay, you succeeded almost automatically. You're moving around, she's far away, she clearly can't hit you. Now what? You're the one who now has the ability to do something. To start piling on points. And Rose did not do that. I don't entirely blame Carla for being an awkward striker who struggled to track down an opponent who wanted nothing but to stay away from her. It can be very difficult to do, especially when you're at such a physical disadvantage. Especially in an arena like the Octagon. Because it's huge. And you're both small. And there's no corners. So it's Rose's fault, honestly.
Oh, yeah.
Incredible. I honestly look forward to rewatching, even though I will be regretting it 3 minutes in. Because...
Yeah, you will be.
Of course. But that's part of the experience, Phil. And it's... Again, I was sort of sad that I missed it because it will go down in history. It was that bad of a fight.
It is. Yeah, absolutely. You know what? One thing that I realized after this is that there is a weird chivalry of MMA crowds. They do not boo women as much as they boo men.
I noticed that too.
Pat Barry was saying about how much they were booing the fight. They weren't actually booing that much.
They sort of started to boo in round 2, and then they kind of seemed to feel bad. And then they were kind of quiet the rest of the fight. I was shocked by that too.
Because we've seen some atrocious women's fights in the depressed us and just in general. And it was just something I weirdly noticed. I was like, if this was 2 guys in there,
oh my god,
at this point, they would be getting showered with booze. The roof would be coming off the place. But yeah, I mean, it reminded me of I think this is probably a more extreme example of Home against Pennington, where it was just after the second round of Home just desperately holding Pennington up against the fence. She just walked back to her corner, and everyone's like, "Yeah, come on, let's go, Holly, fighting so smart." It's like, what is going on? This fight is absolutely abysmal.
Where's the Just Bleed guy when you need him?
Yeah. So, again, if we blame Gaethje on his useless eyes, I'm going to blame it on MMA crowds not being dicks enough.
Hey, look, someone needed some negative reinforcement here.
Right?
Someone needed
They could have saved the day. If they'd started booing like they should have done.
This is why I
started screaming woo.
This is where I was getting at with Trevor Whitman. Someone, I don't know that it would have been different, but clearly this didn't work. Someone needed to be like, "Hey, stupid, you're losing. This is going terribly. You have to do something. You suck. Everyone hates you right now." Maybe it causes Rose to just break down, and then she loses spectacularly, but at least she would have tried something. The Rose who fought the first fight would
maybe she would have broken down and then just pulled herself back together again.
Maybe.
As she has done in the
She needed to be broken down though. The positive reinforcement shit in the corner did not help at all. And even now, after the fight, she is clearly unaware of how badly she did. And Trevor Whitman needs to sit this woman down in the gym and have a long talk, or just a very short, very crude talk.
Just needs to sit her down in front of the footage of her being in that fight.
Yeah, watch this. Count the strikes, Rose. See how long it takes you to fall asleep. It's like counting sheep, except sheep are more entertaining to watch. Well, Carlos Esparza, your new champion.
All-timer. All you can say.
Maybe the worst fight ever. You said it would be the funniest thing since Pena or Pena Nunes or something, and I was like, "There's no way." But it was completely different and also just as funny.
I mean, this is also at the risk of this being my sexism episode, is it does also seem somewhat of a common theme in like the women's divisions, is that like they get to a certain level and then have to lose their belt in one of the most legacy torching ways imaginable.
Well,
like it does seem like, I'm just saying this for you, is that like just keep with it, and eventually you'll get to that point where like Shevchenko will be out against some incredibly outmatched opponent, and then she'll try and do like some spinning kick and then will somehow accidentally dislocate her hip and knock herself out with her own foot. Like,
yeah. Well, you heard it here from the horse's mouth, folks. Phil McKenzie, bitches be losing. That's a direct quote. I want to see that printed in all the MMA tabloids. Yeah, I'm going to disagree with you and play White Knight until it happens to Shevchenko, and then we can both be reactionary, woman-hating MMA
Sorry,
fans
playing
together.
White Knight?
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. That's a potentially offensive term, isn't it?
I mean, just in general, you
don't.
are not the Shevchenko defender here.
No, I'm not defending. Please don't accuse me of that again. Okay, do not say that.
I know she's very beautiful.
All right,
and complete.
She's complete. Let's take a break for the love of God. When we come back, Michael Chandler versus Tony Ferguson. Maybe something else. Maybe not. We'll see after this.
Financial support is fantastic, but there are other, even easier ways to support Heavy Hands. Perhaps the best is by spreading the word. We know our fan base. You're all cool, popular people with serious social media presences. You're tastemakers and trendsetters. Okay, there are one or two of you that don't fit that description. You know who you are, but no matter what, you can always help us out by telling folks about the show. You can also give us a positive rating and review on iTunes and Stitcher, things like that. We rely on word of mouth and positive feedback to grow and improve, so thank you very much for your time and your help. Now, back to the show.
She's complete. Something very disgusting about that.
A complete human being.
Yeah. But just saying she's complete is... I don't know. It doesn't sit right.
It does make you think, completion is the the phrase that you don't want, it's the word that you want to stay away from.
That's what I was trying not to say. Yeah. Completion. It also includes another word within the word completion that I don't want to say.
Yep.
Now I'm looking forward to her retiring, and I realize that when she does, I'll happily say she's finished, and then I'll still be thinking of the time that Phil said she's complete.
Yep. Good. I'm glad I've managed to ruin Valentina Shevchenko for you even more. All I could have asked for.
All right, let me go get a drink. Welcome back to Heavy Hands. On to the third segment and the third fight down from the top of the card. Michael Chandler, Tony Ferguson, Glue Factory main event.
And yet.
Go on.
I thought Tony Ferguson looked pretty good.
Yeah, I thought so too. Until, his body was dissolved and turned into adhesive.
Yeah, I mean, in some ways, it was the darkest outcome.
Right.
Which
is what you wanted, right? You like that.
Oh.
You like that. That's what you like.
Oh.
It's when broken old men
I
just
like
get
people
broken
to
publicly.
learn valuable life lessons.
Yeah, and this is the lesson: is you can have that late career moment where you're feeling amazing and looking good, and you aren't where you used to be. That's what you like, Phil. You asked for this.
No, I asked for Ferguson Pimblett.
I asked for Patty, and he was there in the crowd looking bloated and just get in there, Patty.
If only Chandler had gotten injured, I think he did actually dislocate his finger, I think, before the fight. So if only he'd just pulled out and they'd just been like, we need someone to step in, and then they had to just do Pimblett Ferguson at middleweight.
Yeah, it would have been nice. Anyway, what happened is that Tony Ferguson sort of did okay.
Yeah.
He,
I thought that, he managed to... I mean, I think partially this was that Ferguson is one of those people for whom I think the more of a reach advantage he has, just the more comfortable he is. And ironically, we said this would be the problem with him against Oliveira, but really it's like, I think Ferguson is very happy to like beat people up when he's a lot taller than them, and not unsurprisingly. But yeah, I think he did a good job of like herding Chandler into shots. He dropped him briefly in the first round. He was throwing snap kicks to the body and keeping Chandler from rushing in and level changing on him. It looked like some approximation of prime Tony Ferguson.
And he was also in there taking shots. He got into some wild exchanges while he was trying to keep the pressure on Chandler. It was very reminiscent of like his fight with Abel Trujillo. Or Gleison Tebow. Like he gets this little short, stocky guy and just gets to kind of touch them when they can't touch him. And it did seem to make a huge difference. And I think after that first round, he looked. I said this on Twitter, and people were like, I think that was just Tony Ferguson like being the alpha dog to Michael Chandler and being like, oh yeah, you got me a bit, but I don't actually think so. Like he looked genuinely happy in a way which I cannot remember him looking in a MMA fight after that first round. Yeah, I think he had a great time.
Yeah, I think that he was finally like. Because most of his thing used to be just absolute, absolute intensity.
Yeah.
Just staring the other guy down, and him shaking off. I think Cerrone, who was trying to be buddy before the fight. That was his main thing. But like after that first round, he was like, "Oh my god, I'm still good at MMA."
Yeah. Oh, he didn't even shove Chandler away. I don't even see the alpha dog thing. He patted him on the butt.
Yeah.
I think
he
just hyped.
Had this expression of joy on his face, like, I'm still good at this.
Yeah.
And then Chandler just kicked his head off his shoulders.
Yeah.
Which was a bit of a come down. Not gonna lie.
I mean, I wish it wasn't Tony Ferguson. I could look at some other guy and be like, oh, he's gotten up. Okay, I can do that thing we do as fight fans where I lie to myself and say that what I just watched was okay. But it's much harder to do with Tony Ferguson at this point. It just is. Don't get me wrong, very relieved that Tony Ferguson was up and conscious and seemingly okay so soon afterwards. 'Cause it was a brutal one-shot KO. Of the kind which Tony Ferguson in particular has literally never experienced before. Not even close. I mean, Justin Gaethje didn't have him close to getting one shot KO'd like that. And it's no shock. I mean, it was one of the most insane final strikes of a fight I've ever seen. It was.
Yeah. I mean, we've seen front kick KOs before, but just in terms of the pure violence of it.
Yeah.
I mean, the Silva and Machida and so on, knockouts were sort of characterized by a kind of grace.
Yeah.
This is just, especially I think there's some footage that someone took from from the seats rather than the ones you actually see in the seen from a distance. It is somehow worse.
Really, yeah.
Because you just see it's almost like Tony Ferguson's entire body gets thrown into the air and then he just slumps directly onto his own face.
Yeah.
Like, it is like watching a person get kicked like a football.
Yeah. It's almost like there's a Western called Appaloosa, which is pretty good, where they they do all this tension and build up for the duel.
Mm-hmm.
And then you get like a long 20-second shot from really far away for the actual exchange of shots. And it just sort of robs the dramatic intensity, the storytellingness out of it. And you're just like, someone just got shot. That's probably what it feels like watching that from far away. I say that having not seen the footage you're talking about. Yeah, it was like a punt, even more than like a snap kick. There was nothing graceful about it. I mean, I'll give Chandler credit. Exceptionally well thrown. His timing was perfect. The range at which he threw it was perfect. He did a fantastic job of reading Tony Ferguson's movement and essentially like cut him off with the load up step into the kick. He saw Ferguson drifting, seemed to note the range, watched him circling to the right and thought, if I step right here, he's going to be lined up. I'm going to have a clear shot right down his center. And he did. But,
I mean, he remains a pretty clever fighter.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a great read in the moment.
just a raw read too. Like nothing, just very Yoel Romero-like. Nothing.
Yeah, it is also like, oh, I'm a crazy athlete. I can do this.
Exactly.
People were like, did you train this before the fight? It's like, no, I do it sometimes.
Yeah, I've done it maybe once before. Yeah, just a straight, clean read of the opponent's movement. That is some serious athleticism. You didn't do anything to put them in the path of that shot. You didn't disguise it. You just saw them moving a certain way and you thought, if I step here, they're going to run into my foot at exactly this point, and did it. Yep. Would have been awesome. Still kind of is. Also quite sickening. I guess credit to Chandler for not following up with anything.
Apart from, he did make it he did ruin a bit of the, like, tasteful, respectful warrior thing by then doing, like, 8 backflips around the cage.
Well, I'm not going to fault him for that. He was excited. He won. Crowd was going wild.
I'm not.
He didn't follow up. He didn't continue hurting the man. It's his prerogative to do 13 backflips, which he did. Yeah. So that was that. There's not really anything more to say about it other than that Ferguson looked good. He seemed to flourish against a little short dude, and
and it wasn't, and that's the thing, it wasn't even the kind of finish.
Yeah.
It was brutal and vicious. It wasn't even the kind of finish where you would be like, oh yeah, it showed that Tony just doesn't have it anymore.
No, if that exact shot landed in the Lando Venata fight, it might have KO'd him cold.
Yeah, it would have KO'd pretty much anyone.
Yeah.
Look at it.
I can't imagine someone surviving that shot. I cannot. Yeah. So, was what it was. I don't know. I don't know. It doesn't even really seem to fit into the narrative of Tony Ferguson's decline the way I thought it would at all.
No, that's the thing, is that he might have just been looking actually reasonably alright, and then he just got straight up athleted in a way that just could have happened at any time in his career.
Right. And then you look at this and you're like, put him in against another short dude, he might just still look just that good again.
Yeah. How tall is Paddy Pimblett?
Good question. Let's find out. Because that fight surely needs to be made now.
Yeah. I think some other people have suggested some more like reasonable sounding matchups like Ferguson, Dan Hooker, but I'm going to stick with it. Ferguson Pimblett. Can't not be funny, he
Yeah.
says, full of confidence.
Don't do Dan Hooker. It's going to be gross. It's going to be like the Cerrone fight for Ferguson. It's just going to be, he's going to have no choice but to get into an awful bloody war.
Yeah, that's true, actually. It would just be a disgusting war, whatever happened.
Yeah, Pimblett's only 2 inches shorter, unfortunately, according to Wikipedia. Whereas Chandler was a healthy 4. I don't know. Let's find just a real diminutive guy. Who we got? Who's our shortest?
Clay Guida.
Yeah, Clay Guida. And then watch, he just like out wrestles Tony Ferguson to a win.
Just runs for takedowns at the start of every single round.
That would suck so bad.
We just get the Dariush fight again.
That would suck so bad. Yeah. So I don't know. It doesn't seem to fit in with my expectations. It was somehow more horrible and much more uplifting than I expected. It was a true anomaly fight. And one of, I'm sure, with some distance, I will acknowledge the best knockouts I've ever seen.
Yep.
And I think that's it for this week's episode of Heavy Hands. We've, I'm surely spent, like, as we did last week, like an hour and 40 minutes already talking about these things. We may or may not discuss some other stuff on the Patreon. Whether or not that happens, my plan is, he said, knowing that this would somehow doom him to not executing it, my plan is to watch the Canelo Bivol fight. Because, of course, Canelo Alvarez lost for the first time since Floyd Mayweather. Last weekend against Dimitri Bivol, moving up in weight. So I'm going to watch that, I think, and try to do a commentary for the Patreon in the absence of a UFC 274 bonus episode this week. Otherwise, next week, I guess we got to talk about Blakovich versus Rockitch, which, well, you know, truth be told, doesn't look like a completely miserable card, not yet.
No, the card itself looks decent. I think that main event could be really grim.
Fortunately, Holly Holm versus Ketlin Vieira is after that.
Oh my God. Why did you tell me that?
Fortunately, we have that to look forward to, and that card looks awful. It looks so bad.
So don't even.
Oh
that was
my
all
God.
I needed to hear was Holly Holm, Ketlin Vieira as a main event. And...
Oh my God, it looks really bad.
No, shut up.
It looks terrible. The Jin Young Park is the only guy I care about, and he's fighting Eric Anders.
Shut up.
But don't worry, Phil, because the week after that, guess what? Volkov versus Rosenstrike.
Thanks, Connor.
You're welcome. All right, we'll be back to talk about that stuff next week. If you want to share Phil's enthusiasm for these wonderful main events, you can do that on Twitter.com by finding him at Evil Greg Jackson. Find me at Boxing Bush, BUSCH. Again, check out patreon.com/heavyhands. If there's no UFC 274 chit-chat, I am going to make a concerted effort. Maybe I'll even get that bastard Kyle McLaughlin in to record a little Canelo Bivol commentary with me this week. But otherwise, if you missed it, we did put up a bonus episode last week, so if you haven't heard that yet, you can hear that and like 70 other bonus episodes or something at this point for $3 a month, which is very cheap. Frankly, you should be thanking me for charging you so much. We'll talk to you next week. Until then, if you came here today for the finer points of face punching and the finer points of, I guess, moving around and breathing, you came to the right place. This has been Heavy Hands. Was that a good characterization of the?
No, it was. I mean, it was accurate. This was certainly two of the things they could have been said to have been doing.
Fortunately, the referee didn't step in to hold a mirror in front of either of their mouths. So we can't be completely sure on that second point.